Thanks for downloading another segment from the Best of the Classic Metal Show. The Classic Metal Show is heard live on Saturdays from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern, exclusively at www.theclassicmetalshow.com. And now here's another piece of Classic Metal Show history on the Best of the Classic Metal Show.
The Classic Metal Show.
That's Exciter from their 1983 release, Heavy Metal Maniac, and that one's called Iron Dog, Chris. And, we got our pals over there at Metal Lessons here on the Classic Metal Show radio network. And as you said off air, I bet you they're excited. And that's no pun, excited that we're covering Exciter here on the show.
Well, dude, as I told you off air, man, and as everybody knows, I am a big Thrash fan. I loved the 80s Thrash scene, and certainly everybody knows the biggest name bands. Your obviously Metallica and Megadeth broke out from there, and Anthrax and
Testament and all that good stuff.
Exodus, etc. But there was a whole nother wave of bands that came out in the early 80s of thrashers, and one of the bands that I was most impressed with back in the 80s, I remember getting the US Metal compilation record. That's the first time I had ever heard of these guys, and the band was called Exciter, and they became, for a lot of people, they became one of these bands that was just well known in the underground, and they never seemed to break big for whatever reason, but certainly us underground people loved this band. So I figured, why not have Exciter on the show since they have a new record out?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we want to welcome founding member of Exciter, John Ricci, to the show. So welcome to the Classic Metal Show there, John.
Well, thanks for having me. It's it's good exposure even after all these years.
well, what did you think of that build-up?
Awesome.
You're gonna have
good. I mean, you got to get the audience primed,
Yeah, sure. Well, we we don't just do that for anyone, and we treat you Canucks a little bit more special than the Americans,
Well, I appreciate the special treatment.
Sure. Well, John, for people that are not really aware of Exciter, can we maybe start off with maybe you giving like the 5 minutes, 20 years and 5 minutes to let people know, about the basic roots of the band and, how you came up and, why you went away and why you're back.
First of all, our first record was kind of like we weren't expecting such a diehard following that we created. We were just trying to write good heavy metal songs, and we had sent a demo tape to Shrapnel Records in San Francisco, and Mike Varney, who owns the label, called me up and he said, I got your demo in the mail, and I don't really understand this kind of music, but I like it. He says, you guys kind of remind me of another Bay Area band called Metallica. Have you ever heard of them? I said, well, sort of, we're talking like early 80s, So he wanted to sign us to a deal, and we're all freaked out because we've been sending demos all over the world trying to get some sort of interest. And the first record that came out was actually, like you mentioned, US Metal Volume 2. One of our songs was featured, World War III, and that song was the beginning of Exciter's musical direction. Was that particular song with that particular guitar riffing, and and we started getting fan mail from all over the world. We didn't know how to handle it. We had to get like a P.O. box at the post office to handle all the mail. We didn't know what was happening,
Right.
And then around that time, Megaforce Records started to get interested in us, and they signed us for our second record, Violence of Force, and our profile even got greater with that record. And we started touring. We did some small dates with Anthrax in upstate New York. We did a Merciful Fate tour. Then we moved on to Long Live the Loud. We got signed with Music for Nations in the UK. We got to know the guys at Motorhead quite well, and we did a U.S. tour with Motorhead the summer of '85. And then,
Right.
of course, within the band, we had some ego problems started to happen. And I decided to leave the band, and I was out of the band for like 5 years. The band finally broke up in the late 80s. I got back together with the original guys, and we continued to '93.
So did you get your ego problem in check there, or what?
Well, it was just.
I'm just kidding.
No, everybody handles success differently. Some guys are the same guy that started off playing the bars is the same guy that's playing in front of like 30,000 people, and some individuals, they change, and they, egos clash, and disagreements start to happen about business decisions, what's best for the band, and it seemed that my thoughts about how the band should be handled was always different from the other guys in the band. So that's the main reason why I left the group. But we tried again. We got back together in 1990. We got signed to a German label, Noise Records, in Germany. Then from there we went to a British label, and then the original lineup broke up again. And then I decided to continue the band in '96 with a brand new lineup. So, and here we are today. We're still playing, Europe, various festivals throughout Europe. We've done a few shows in the U.S., a few shows in Canada, but mostly overseas. Sure. And it seems that we've proven ourselves all over again with this new lineup. We've managed to please the old fans, and we've got a lot of new fans that are behind the band with the way the band exists today. So that's where we are right now.
Very cool. Well, John, I want to go back to the old days before we talk about the new record, and I was always interested, probably more now than back then, because back then, I was just a kid, and you saw bands come and you saw bands go, and you really didn't understand a lot of why. But looking back at it now, why do you think that Exciter did not break in the U.S. the way, I don't even want to put like a band like Metallica in the equation, because obviously what they've done is unique upon itself, but a band like, I don't know, Exodus or Death Angel or those types of bands, they had significant U.S. following where you guys never seemed to get, I don't know what it would be, that break, or maybe you didn't know the right person at MTV or what it was, but what do you think it was? Do you think it was just that, wrong place, wrong time, or do you think it had something to do with your singer Dan also being the drummer, so he wasn't actually out in front, or why do you think that the band never broke big?
The problem is we're based in Canada, okay? We never had proper management. Bands like Anthrax and Metallica, they had people in the industry totally believing in the band, their music, and their motivation. We had no one who believed in Exciter the way we did. We had no manager. We just had lack of professional people working with us. Everything we did was because of our own, motivation. No one was helping us. Now you got Metallica and all these bands. They're in the U.S. The major management companies are down there. Record companies are down there. Canada is the worst country to be based from if you're trying to sue heavy metal music. Yeah. So we had this kind of stigma against us. So that, I tell a lot of journalists, a lot of interviews that I do, they've asked a similar question, and that's my answer. We never had proper management to really push us.
You mean you couldn't get Eddie Trunk over there at Megaforce to help you out?
For some reason, we didn't have the interest. People weren't interested enough to push us where we should be going. I can't give you an exact answer why we're still kind of like this real underground band. In high-profile people won't work with us for whatever reason. I don't know.
Right.
So it's a hard question to answer.
Well,
we have dedicated fans all over the world.
Right.
They come to the concerts. The attendance are good. They buy our merchandise. If you go to the Exciter MySpace, there's like 66,000 viewings on MySpace, and you think that would be enough to impress, high-profile management to take interest in us, and they don't, and it's very frustrating for us. We have the talent, we have the dedication, we have the songwriting ability, What's the problem?
Right.
Well, John, are you friends or acquaintances with like Jeff Waters from Annihilator, or any of the guys from like Kick-Axe, or maybe even Brian Vollmer from Helix? You ever associate with any of those guys ever?
Well, you mentioned that one name I'd never want to talk about is Jeff Waters.
Oh, nice. Why is that?
Pardon me?
Why is that?
Well, I can't get into all this detail, but we had. I don't want to talk about Jeff. I mean, it was just some real bad stuff happened. His involvement with Exciter the way we exist today, which made his dealings very difficult for us to pursue. Our career the way it is now, and I never want to see or talk to that guy ever again.
Chris, get Jeff on the phone. Let's talk to him.
I don't think so.
We're kidding you, John.
Then you'd hear me swearing if you want to hear swearing. Otherwise, I don't really know the guys from Helix, and I don't know any other. I mean, I'm friends with Anvil,
sure,
Pile Driver, some of these other guys, but. I don't. I don't talk to any of these other guys. I don't really know them.
Sure. Well, the reason I was mentioning because like you were saying, you weren't having a lot of success in the States and whatnot, and I know that those bands somehow were able to break through and have a fan following in the States as well as around the world. And I don't see any reason why Exciter would be the exception to the rule, because you guys obviously are a solid thrash band, and we're out there, keeping pace with the Metallicas and the Anthrax and et cetera, et cetera. So I was just wondering, if you had associations with those guys, if they'd be kind enough to, point some good management your direction.
Well, I can tell you a story. We just played recently a show in Spain. At the Artarf Vega Rock Festival, and it was a mixed bag of all kinds of bands. I mean, and one of the bands was Rat. From I'm sure you know who Rat is from.
Oh, we're very familiar with Stephen Pierce. He's a good friend of the show. He calls in frequently.
So, like their road manager was apparently Canadian from Toronto, and we had met up at the airport just by coincidence, and we were talking and. He's a very nice person, and he said to me, "Are you like the Exciter from Canada, like Heavy Metal Maniac, Violence and Force Days?" I said, "Yes, same band and just new lineup, So he said, "Well, look, here's my business card, and give me a call, maybe we can talk." And I said, "Great, sure, yeah." And he's with a management company in Los Angeles, so I thought, okay, well, maybe something's going to happen here. So I sent him an email and so on, and try to get something happening, and they just never returned my emails. It's frustrating. Like no one is really interested enough to take us to another level.
Well, it's a shame too, because you hear there's so many wannabes, especially with this new thrash resurgence. If you take some of the newer stuff that's coming out, because there's this whole new wave, and then you put it up against like you guys' new album, Thrash Speed Burn, it's not even the same caliber.
Thank you. I have no idea. I mean, this is actually the first Exciter record that I listened to. Every time I do an Exciter record, after we record it, I never play it again. Okay?
Right.
But this album, I can actually listen to it over and over and over. It's very strong. It has all the ingredients of what speed and thrash metal, how it came about.
Right.
So I know you're asking some very difficult questions for me to answer, like. In a clear manner, because I know there's no straight answer to it. Like I'm puzzled why we're not bigger than we are.
Right.
I'm not saying that in an egotistical way. It's just we have everything it takes for the big time, and we just can't get there.
Yeah, I hear you, man, and I agree with you too, man. Because as I said early on, I was a fan, I guess basically from the beginning. I didn't realize it was the beginning. I just remember hearing World War III and was like, man, this is good shit. And and then being here in the States, every once in a while you'd hear about Exciter, but it wasn't like you saw you guys out there a whole lot. It's just every once in a while, you'd pick up a CD or you'd see a used CD in a store or something. You're like, oh, I don't have this.
Yeah.
But
Well, during the 80s,
anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, we did play. In the middle 80s, we did play the U.S. quite a few times. We played Chicago a number of times as well. I don't know if is it the Metro.
Yeah, the Metro is still. Yeah, it's over there by.
No, we did a Motorhead tour. We did a Megadeth tour. We did a Merciful Fate tour. And we passed through Chicago a number of times. But that was the peak of the band's career. Now there's so many young bands that are doing it better. Than bands like us. I mean, there's some really good bands out there. And they have a kind of a fresh angle how to play speed and thrash. So. We've sort of like been put aside, but we're not gonna die. We're not gonna go away. We're gonna just keep doing our thing. I hope I'm sounding positive. I'm not trying to sound negative.
That's all right. You're a gloomy Gus. It's okay. Well, John, obviously, man, you do have a new album called Thrash, Speed, Burn, and it is definitely a burner, man. I mean, the one thing I noticed from listening to this, and I'll be the first one to admit, I don't have the 90s, the stuff that you put out in the 90s. So, for me, the best I can do is compare it to, like, Long Live the Loud or Violence and Force. And from listening to the new record, the one thing that really stands out is that your vocalist, Kenny Winter, brings a new dimension to the band that maybe you didn't have in the old days. Is that how you see it?
It's exactly what it is. I mean, he has traits of the original singer at some parts, Dan Beeler type vocal, and then he has a little bit of the singer that we had previously, Jacques Boulanger vocals, from our previous record. So Andy has his own style. So I'm really pleased with his vocals. With
the band that you have now, I mean, clearly it's your band now, and you've put together this new lineup. When you guys play the old material, does it still have the same feel to it, or is it like a whole new vibe because it's a whole new band?
Totally the same feel. It's totally the same feel. I mean, in some cases, the energy level is greater than the original Exciter. I mean, when we play shows, we play half of new Exciter, half of the old Exciter. And the fans react equally to the old and new material. So the intensity, the drive, the over-the-top delivery, it's still the same as the old days.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it does seem like, as the guitarist of the band is kind of, in thrash bands, what would be considered, more or less the focal point. It seems like you've got very much like Gary Holt from Exodus, where you're bringing more ferocity than you did in the early days, man. Do you feel like you're more, more angry in your playing, or?
Exactly. I get pissed off as the years go on, and they get more angry, and the guitar riffs get more angry.
Right.
I'm very driven. I'm a very motivated person. The guitar style and stays angry and aggressive. That's Exciter. I don't want to disappoint the fans because they're expecting that. I hate to experiment. I do all the songwriting now. I want to keep Exciter's musical direction the same as, when we first started. I don't want to experiment. I'm afraid to experiment, just in case it goes bad. Plus, in the early days, we're kind of a nervous band. What I mean by that is, like, the success was happening so fast, and we're writing songs, but we weren't doing it, we weren't like a mature band. Like, what I mean by mature is mature songwriters. We're still like, just trying to write good music. But now that I've sort of conquered the musical direction, I know exactly what the fans expect, and it's a personal favorite of the way I play, guitar. I just want to deliver the same for years to come.
Well, excellent, John. Well,
Yeah.
is there anything else about this new CD that we haven't touched on that maybe you want to point out to us or the fans?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of songs are, you know, a little bit different but good. Like, I mean, there's a song, Crucifixion, you know, really slow kind of Sabbathy kind of feel to it.
Right.
Which because of Kenny's vocal delivery, just, you know, the whole song it's a very, very strong number. And there's one song called Betrayal where, you know, I listen to a lot of, you know, death and, you know, more, you know, goth, you know, Cradle of Filth, you know, all kinds of bands. So I think that whole goth and the darker side of metal influenced the vocals on the song Betrayal, because it's not your typical high screaming exciter vocal style on that particular song. So those songs are a little different, but they're well written and they're very strong, you know.
They're a real toe tapper.
Yeah.
All right, John. Well, where can people find you out there on the web? You mentioned you guys have a MySpace. Where can people find you on the MySpace?
Oh.
I'm pretty sure it's myspace.com/exciterofficial.
Exactly. Yeah.
And do you have a website, or do you pretty much use the MySpace as your main website?
If you just Google Exciter homepage, it'll bring you to the homepage. It'll say "Long Live the Loud Exciter homepage."
Very cool.
Does Google work in Canada?
Oh, absolutely. Oh. We're not as backwards as you think we are. Have you ever been here?
Oh, absolutely. I used to travel
okay.
through Ontario. Yeah, I've traveled across Canada a few times, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I've jumped in a barrel and rode the falls. It's fun.
And you didn't die?
I'm tough. American.
All right, John. Well, we appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us here on the Classic Metal Show. I wish you luck on the whole getting good representation and good management. And Chris and I run across somebody, we'll send them your way.
Okay, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the interview.
Sure, absolutely. Well, before we let you go, John, we always ask everybody the traditional Classic Metal Show question. We've been asking every one of our interviews for the last 4 years this question. And you brought him up early in the interview, and we always ask, how has Lemmy from Motorhead influenced your career?
Well, I think every band looks at Lemmy as inspiration. I mean, you know, he's the whole essence of, you know, what metal and the harder edge of music is all about, you know. So I think everyone's inspired by him because, you know, he stuck to his roots. He came up with such a raw musical style in the 70s with the first, like the early Motorhead albums, that no one can match, like as far as intensity and songwriting. So, I mean, one of the songs I wrote, the guitar riff for the song I Am the Beast, was actually inspired right after the Motorhead tour. So I came up with a riff which is not a rip-off of any of their songs, but, you know, I got inspired by their riffs that they play, you know, like. So I think every musician in one way or another has a little Motorhead in them, you know. That's what I have to say about Lemmy. Sure,
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, John. Well, we appreciate you taking a few minutes, talk to us here on the Classic Metal Show. Go pick up the new Exciter release, which is called what, Chris?
It's called Thrash Speed Burn.
Absolutely. And, John, as a tradition here, we always let the artist pick a closing song and maybe tell us a quick story about it.
Well, on the new record, the last song on the album, actually, Rot the Devil King. We put it at the end of the album thinking it wasn't a very strong song. But when you record a song and we play it live, it takes on a new meaning. And in the studio, that particular song turned out to be an excellent number. And it's, you know, what Exciter is all about, like a straight-ahead classic Exciter, as far as I'm concerned. And it matches up to any of the old Exciter from the 80s. So that's one of my favorite songs on the album, Rot the Devil King. It'll rip your face off.
Excellent. Well, here it is. This is brand new Exciter exclusively here
on your Classic Metal Show.
Thanks for checking out the Best of the Classic Metal Show. You can tune into the Classic Metal Show live every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern, exclusively at www.theclassicmetalshow.com.